In this video, we're going to be building an inexpensive, small form factor gaming PC powered by SteamOS. And of course, you could always install Windows on something like this, but I wanted more of a console experience for this setup, mainly to put in the living room. I also wanted to keep the cost down, so most of the parts that I have here are actually used from eBay. I will leave links in the description. And when it comes down to it, this whole setup is relatively inexpensive. You just need to keep an eye out on eBay for mainly the graphics card and that CPU. I'll go over all the parts used as we're putting this thing together. And first up, we've got the motherboard. We're going with an AM4 platform due to pricing, and I've got a micro ATX board here instead of a mini ITX. It's just a basic B550 board from Gigabyte. You could go mini ITX with the case we're going to be using. Storage is really going to be up to you. I've got a 1 TB drive in here, and I've just added a heatsink because there's no cooling on the M.2 drive with this motherboard that I'm using here. And since it's an AM4 platform, we're going to be using DDR4, which is going to come in a lot cheaper, even for new sticks. I'm going to go with a 16 GB kit that I picked up on Amazon a little while ago. I think it was like $26 for this kit. T-Force, 16 gigs, dual channel, running at 3200 megahertz. If this was a Windows build, I'd probably go with 32, but 16 is going to be plenty for SteamOS. Now it's time to talk about the CPU, and you've got a bunch of different choices. This has been my main go-to, the 5700G. These are a little under $100 over on eBay, 8 cores, 16 threads. It's got a decent little iGPU, but we're not going to be utilizing it here because we've got a dedicated GPU to go in this build. 5600X would also be a good choice, but this actually does come in a bit more powerful. Cooling the 5700G is pretty simple. You could go with the Wraith Stealth, but I've got a Wraith Spire here that I picked up used on eBay. It's not the LED version. It's just the basic Spire, so it's a bit taller, and I mean, these are workhorses. We're going to be able to max this thing out, and it's not going to overheat. The 5700G is a 65-watt part. The case I'm going to be using for this build is kind of an Amazon special. It's known as the V500. They're $45 over there. Nothing crazy, very plain Jane. It does come with a tempered glass side panel. It supports mini ITX or micro ATX motherboards, SFX or ATX power supplies, and you can do a GPU up to 335 millimeters in this thing. The case that I bought didn't come with any extra fans, but I wanted to add a couple up top just to pull some more air out. I've got two 120 millimeter fans here. Links for everything will be in the description. But these things are actually really easy to build inside of. Our power supply is going to mount up front here. You can go with that SFX or an ATX. We have this little bracket, and they do have a black version with some ventilation on the front. So if you want to go that route, you definitely could. So I've just got everything out of the way, going with that rear I/O panel, and we can drop the motherboard, CPU, RAM, and storage right in here. There's not a ton of front I/O, so we don't have a ton of wires. There's one full-size USB 3 port and USB-C, plus we have our power button. So I've got all of that situated, put the power extension cable back in here because we need to install a power supply. I've installed the bracket, and I'd say that a 750 watt with this is a bit overkill. 650 maximum would be fine for something like this, but I had this laying around and I do think it works. It's a semi-modular power supply, and really all we need are two 8-pin PCIe connectors for the GPU we're going to be using, our 24-pin motherboard connector, and our 8-pin CPU connector. I'm not going to be using any SATA drives or anything like that with this, but if I wanted to add some down the road, I could just add the cabling in here. It's not going to be in the way. So I've got my cables routed properly, and having a bag of zip ties is a must with something like this. I've also installed those two 120 millimeter fans up top. Last thing we need to do is add our GPU. And since I want to run official SteamOS on this, I do need a Radeon GPU. 5000 series up to 7000 is going to work out just fine. And what I have right here is a used Radeon RX 6750 XT. It's an ASRock variant, triple fan design. If you don't want to go to 1440p, and even with this, there's going to be some newer stuff we might have to drop down to 1080, go with the RX 6600. That's only got 8 gigs of VRAM, but the 6750 does have 12, so we've got a little extra there that's going to help out. We'll just slot it right down in there, and this card does take two 8-pin PCIe connectors, and I've got plenty with that CX750M here. Once it's all said and done, it looks a little something like this, actually much cleaner than I thought it would be, and really it comes down to using that modular power supply or semi-modular power supply. Because with this, I'm not going to use a bunch of the other cables like SATA connectors and things like that. I can just leave those right off that power supply. It's not going to take up any extra room in here. So getting SteamOS installed is really simple. If you've installed any other operating system, you're going to do it just like that. Over on Valve's website, you're going to pick up the Steam Deck recovery image, flash it to a USB drive, and I suggest using a faster USB drive. You can use an application known as Rufus. You're going to boot from that USB and install to your internal drive. It's very simple to do, and all the instructions you need are over on Valve's website right here. So I've got official SteamOS installed on the M.2 SSD. We'll go ahead and boot it up. Just a bit of RGB on this unit right there on the side of the GPU, but luckily there's a switch so we can totally disable it if we want to. Just going to leave it on. Through all of my testing, I'm going to have this side panel on, and from SteamOS we cannot adjust the fan curve on the GPU itself, but from the BIOS we could adjust the two case fans that we have here and the CPU cooler. I'm going to leave it stock. If I need to adjust it, we'll talk about it at the end. Pretty sure it's going to be fine like this. So yeah, I've done a little bit of testing so far and everything's working great here. This motherboard doesn't have Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, but you could always install it if you wanted to or use a dongle. I'm going to be using Ethernet here. We've got access to everything we would on the Steam Deck except for TDP and GPU control directly from SteamOS. So if we head over here to our performance, we can bring this up so we've got all the information we need. Enable VRR. I've got this set to 1440p 120. It's a 144 Hz display, but I think 120 is going to be fine, trying to lock some stuff down at it. Manual GPU clock isn't working with the 6750 XT right here, so everything's really just going to be controlled from the BIOSes. Taking a look at our settings, if we move down, we're on official SteamOS Holo 3.714, and I did update to the beta. I usually do that with SteamOS, but the stable was working also. We've got that AMD Ryzen 7 5700G, 8 cores, 16 threads, 16 gigs of system memory, and of course, that Radeon RX 6750 XT with 12 gigs of VRAM. So yeah, it installed without a hitch. Performance has been great here, but now it's time to check out some real-world gaming on this thing. Let me bring my performance metrics up right here, just so we can see a bit more. And we're going to start with Cyberpunk 2077. All right, I will move into my game capture in just a second, but since I'm here at the table, I figured I'd just start this game up. Right now, we're at 1440p Ultra preset. I'll show you real quick. We're at 1440 Ultra, and with that Ultra preset, it does take FSR 2.1 to quality. I think the 6750 XT at 1440 needs a little more, so we're going to go to balanced with it. And with it set to quality, that preset of Ultra, we were seeing an average of 71. This is going to bring us up over that just to make sure it's not going to dip even when there's tons of particle effects and explosions on screen. And I'd say 1440p gaming with SteamOS on this system is totally possible. Just keep in mind, you will need to do a little bit of scaling. 1080 Ultra is really great basically across the board, but I wanted to take the resolution up just a bit, and it's not bad at all. Through my testing, I will keep an eye on those CPU and GPU temps. They are showing up in our performance metrics, but so far, so good. Next up, Doom Eternal 1440p high with FSR set to balance. I figured I'd have to take this down to medium or even, medium 1080 given just how hard this game is to run. Originally, when I started this up, frame gen was automatically enabled, and even in the main menu, it just fell on its face. It was getting like 34 FPS. So there's still an issue here with frame gen and Doom the Dark Ages on SteamOS, but disabling it does give us a really good frame rate. I mean, this game feels great on this system. But when it comes to Spider-Man 2, I did have a few issues with this one, and I'm not exactly sure if it's due to SteamOS itself or, Proton, but without any frame gen, even at 1080 low, I wasn't seeing a really high frame rate out of it. In order to get the performance you're seeing here, we're now at 1440 high with FSR frame gen enabled. I even went back and deleted the Proton files just to see if that would help, but no luck there, so there's definitely something weird going on here. Here's Borderlands 3, 1440p Ultra settings, and I know it's an older one, but with this game, I've always had issues with SteamOS with, shaders compiling. This is kind of few and far in between. I did have a few stutters here and there, but overall, it's performing way better than I thought it would. And finally, Marvel Rivals at 1440p, high settings, FSR set to balance. That kind of seems to be the case with the 6750 XT. Looks great here, it's playing just fine. I was really hoping I could lock it down at 120, but of course, if we took it down to 1080, there's no doubt we could go right there and keep it at 120 all day. Last thing I wanted to talk about here were CPU and GPU temps with this case. Keep in mind, if you use a different cooler, different case, these temps are going to be much different. When it comes to the CPU, temps were relatively low. Average 1440p gaming, 56 degrees Celsius, and the maximum I saw was 63. As for the GPU, that RX 6750 XT, average 1440p gaming, 73 degrees Celsius, and the maximum I saw it hit was 81. So we didn't hit thermal throttle. And I'll tell you, you couldn't hear the case fans or the CPU fan, but once the GPU hit around 70 degrees Celsius, those three fans did spin up. So I'd say adding another fan on the bottom, or even just taking what I have here, removing one of those top 120 millimeter fans and putting it on the bottom would help out a lot. But overall, I'm really impressed with the performance so far. And like I mentioned, if you wanted to get out cheaper, I would go with the RX 6600. You could even go with the smaller case. You'll be good to go with a 1080p across the board. And if you don't mind using a little FSR, you could take some of them up to 1440. I wanted to get a bit more out of it, so I went with that 6750 XT. This worked out really well. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. If you're interested in putting something like this together, I will leave links to everything I used in the description, along with some alternatives if you want to get out a bit cheaper. If you've got any questions or you want to see anything else running on this rig, just let me know in the comments below. Like always, thanks for watching.